everyone. I'm Denise Garth, Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, and you're listening to the Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast series. Follow along as I interview the best and brightest leaders in the insurance industry and InsurTech landscape to bring you the latest in digital transformation, innovation, industry trends, challenges, and opportunities, as well as next-gen technologies. We use our experience to anticipate what's next without losing sight of what's now. Stay tuned to find out your next now. Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast. This is Denise Garth. I'm thrilled to have you join us for the Future of Insurance podcast series here at Majesco. I am really thrilled to welcome Chris Frankland. He is the COO of NextShield, but he and I have gotten to know each other extremely well over the last few years from an InsurTech standpoint and been on a number of panels, and I'm thrilled he's joining us today. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Denise. Great to speak to you again. Thank you.
So, Chris, I always like to start off because there are people in the industry that probably don't know you. So why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of background on yourself and what you do, where you've taken from a career standpoint?
Yeah, thanks, Denise. Would love to. So for folks out there who don't know me, Christopher Frankland, founder of InsurTech 360, and more recently as well, COO of NextShield, who are a subsidiary of NextPlay Technologies and part of a broader Next FinTech group. So I'll definitely dive into that a little bit more later as we go through the kind of our conversation today. Typically you'll find me, speaking at multiple insurance and InsurTech events globally. Most recently, I co-chaired the Underwriting Innovation USA event in Chicago. In my spare time, I love advising and mentoring with startups across the InsurTech and FinTech space. I'm a mentor at Lloyd's Lab, GIA, and the Generator Group. And I'm also working on a startup that will be launching in 2023. So add to that a few kids, it's busy.
You don't get a lot of sleep.
There's not much. I'll take what I can get.
So one of the things that you and I talked about, Chris, and we kind of talked about it on the panel that we were recently on for the Silicon Prairie InsurTech event here in Omaha, which we both are from this area, is really about this new phase of InsurTech. When it kind of emerged out of FinTech in about 2014, 2015, and it's just been growing by leaps and bounds and accelerating, we're kind of moving into a new phase. And some of it's driven probably by some of the market and economic conditions, but I think it's also driven by just having more experience around some of the technologies and some of the business models. So the first area was really heavily focused on front-end distribution. And what do you think this next era is going to be? And what learnings did we have from this first area that will influence this next generation of InsurTech?
That's a great question. And, it's funny when you say, God, I mean, it was about 2014. I was talking to Trent Cooksley about this. We were joking that we're like the OGs of InsurTech. And I know there's a few others out there, but Denise, I think we're all in that kind of bracket, right? Where we were kind of there from day one, so to speak. And you kind of think back to that first InsurTech Connect ITC event in Vegas, where there was just it was just a crazy buzz, wasn't it, around insurance and innovation and kind of thinking about these new sort of more customer-centric ways to think about insurance. And I think the crazy thing looking back, and even now, it's like a lot of that stuff back then wasn't really rocket science. It was, being kind of done and built across other verticals and industries, but insurance primarily at the time, as we know, was really kind of behind the curve when it came to building and creating a customer experience that was just okay. And so I think, at the time, the wow factor was certainly we can build mobile responsive designs, workflows, customer journeys. If I wanted to access my insurance ID card online, that alone would have just been miraculous. And so I think the bar was so low at the time that everything just seemed amazing. And I think for people at the time who were in that space, kind of, going from insurance to this more customer-centric way of thinking, perhaps under the InsurTech umbrella, this idea of using technology to deliver and rethink traditional insurance experience, it was a really exciting time. Coming out of that, I suppose in the 7 or 8 years since, what I've really seen, and I think what we've all seen, is kind of a convergence across the insurance space, a much broader alignment around innovative thinking, when it comes to different methodologies, thinking about customer journey mapping, design thinking, creating these innovation teams and innovation labs. I worked with a carrier for a few years. They made tremendous strides in that space. So I think perhaps the first thing coming out of it, just then broader leveling of the playing field when it comes to innovative thinking. Coming back to your question about what's coming next, obviously I think some lessons learned there, moving from waterfall to perhaps agile, obviously is a tremendous benefit. I think the formation and the creation of innovative groups and labs has been very positive. I think one thing going forwards from a cultural perspective is just, making sure that we're thinking more broadly in terms of teams and organizations, that we bring everybody on that journey, right? That it's not just the lucky few who get to participate in these kind of greenfield labs where all the fun stuff happens. We need to be bringing the entire organization on this kind of digital journey towards what it is we're building. I'm sure we'll go a little bit deeper into it, but thinking about AI, thinking about RPA, robotic process automation, a lot of technology that's exciting, but at the same time can be quite scary for people who perhaps are not as familiar with it, may have some concerns around what it means for them in their future. So I think much more to come from a technology point of view. I think from an ethical and cultural perspective, lots of questions there to be answered. And ultimately, I think building more tools and platforms, people within the industry, not just the customers external to insurance companies, but the internal customers, the employees. How do we make their jobs more enjoyable, effective? How do we, can we build better tools, better platforms so they can work more effectively as well?
Another thing I was thinking about when you were kind of talking about some of the technology, and we'll get into this a little bit further, Chris, but back in 2014, 2015, hardly anybody was moving to the cloud. It was still like, oh, I'm not sure about that. It's kind of risky type of thing. And think how quickly that changed. And I think that in itself has just really kind of transformed the whole InsurTech movement, because we're able now to kind of leverage some of the startups, technologies, in an ecosystem kind of way to be able to kind of use that. But cloud really kind of accelerated that.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. And, when you think of AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, all of the players in the cloud space, they offer to a large extent similar services and capabilities, right? So when you think about some of the AI tools, the machine learning tools, each one has their own flavor, but at the same time, as you just said, Denise, absolutely bang on. The innovation, the technology that perhaps was open and available to more exclusively the InsurTechs, the startups coming into the space, now is absolutely being leveraged across incumbents within the insurance industry. And I think, as the speed to delivery, the speed to adoption, I think typically has been a little bit more challenging for the incumbent organizations, purely because of the tech debt, the legacy technology, the more manual, antiquated processes already in place. I think, some of those hurdles are being tackled and addressed, and, we're seeing greater strides being made by kind of the bigger, more traditional carriers into the cloud space. So I think, coming back to that idea of, the leveling of the playing field, everybody's an InsurTech. I think that was maybe Matteo Carbone who quoted that many years ago. But, essentially everybody at some point will become an InsurTech of some sort. But at the same time, that bar is always going to be moved a little bit higher by perhaps the companies who are able to move just a little bit more quickly than the others.
And I think that technology now is really helping to kind of what I see coming back together. You and I talked about this on the panel we were on with InsurTech and FinTech kind of merging back together, and it's all being driven by that customer. And it's really financial functionality that's becoming native component of a technology stack and also of a business model, where you really have opportunities for embedded or as a service InsurTech or FinTech rather than just pure FinTech. That requires partnerships and really tech-enabled connectivity. And the implications pretty dramatic to be able to kind of bring this together from a customer perspective and taking all these kind of traditional silos and have an interconnected one, from banking and investment to insurance. What are you seeing? Because I know that you're kind of experimenting in some of this area too, Chris.
I think in terms of fintech, we have seen kind of a transformation occur in the insurtech space that was already happening in the fintech space, right? So this idea of building customer-centric platform solutions, personalized towards that end user, fintech, and banking kind of had a head start there. But certainly I do think we're seeing kind of a convergence between banking and payments and insurance and fintech. Putting aside the regulatory issues, which there are certainly many in that space, when it comes to thinking about the customer and their needs and the customer journey, we've always been so siloed, and we think about these things in verticals, right? It's if I'm buying a house, it's such a fragmented experience in terms of piecing those pieces together of the puzzle. The buying of the house, getting a loan, buying insurance. It's a daunting and scary experience for anybody who hasn't gone through it before, because there's just so many things that can go wrong and there's so much friction involved. And then when you throw auto and you throw healthcare into that mix, we're such a segmented kind of society when it comes to thinking about all of these key parts of a person's life journeys. I think with insurtech and fintech and thinking about property technology as well, there's a real opportunity through tech. Like, APIs have been around for goodness knows how long, but we're starting to see the emergence of an API ecosystem that's much more flexible, transparent. Talking to somebody about this the other day, but I used to work with SOAP. It's a web service protocol that I hope nobody else has to ever touch or go near, because it was just so burdensome. Now we have technology that makes this stuff easy, low code, no code. We're able to move quickly, we can adapt quickly. It's an exciting time, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy. The same challenges are still there around data cleanliness. We have more and more data, but how do we use it? How do we use it intelligently to make better decisions and actionable decisions? So this is a really exciting time to be part of the insurtech and the fintech space. And answering your question about what am I specifically perhaps doing in this space, NextShield, we are building a product in the insurance space that's going to align with our banking capability under Next Bank. We are building a digital bank. We're building an insurance company, carrier, and product where you will start to see a much closer alignment between banking and insurance activities of a potential customer.
One of the other things that this kind of brings, I think, up to the forefront, and we've just finished our annual consumer research. The report will be coming out here shortly. But what we have found is that there is a growing and rising interest in financial wellness as a topic. That financial wellness is really a multifaceted concept for consumers to have kind of a coordinated command of all the factors that affect their finances, from a day-to-day living to achieving longer-term goals. And I think COVID really kind of brought that to the forefront. How do I make sure that I've got, income coming in, that I can make sure that I can buy my home, I can pay for my insurance? Are there different alternatives for my auto insurance or my homeowner's insurance that can help me manage that cost down so that I can buy additional benefits or I can save towards retirement? It all kind of comes together into really looking at this stuff much more holistically from a financial wellness perspective rather than a product perspective. And I think companies that are beginning to kind of move in this direction to say, how do they fit into that, will gain a competitive advantage versus that kind of siloed approach. Or they're going to have to partner with somebody who can kind of bring that together. What do you kind of see, Chris? What are the opportunities and what are the risks for those insurers in the industry that aren't thinking about that in terms of the consumer?
That's such a great topic. When I first moved to the States, probably 20 odd years ago now, it's always baffling to me just this array of options available when it came to financial wellness. So on one side, coin, you're trying to pay the bills, trying to get by day to day, week to week, month to month. And then on the other side of the table, you have all of these financial experts saying, hey, at this point in your life, you need to have, this much in retirement. What is your 401k, college savings, Nest 529s, HSAs, FSAs? I mean, the list is endless of where should you be, at one point in your life in terms of savings and And it's just really hard, right? And you mentioned COVID, Denise, spot on, right? You think about world now, where we are in terms of, the economy, inflation, different other factors. And reality is a lot of people are struggling to pay energy bills this winter, right? And it's frustrating, it's difficult, and it's challenging from a financial wellness point of view when you have all of these milestones that you're supposed to be meeting in your life, but the reality is the world doesn't quite work like that. So I think from a financial wellness point of view, it's kind of incumbent upon us to approach it with a bit more empathy and compassion, and maybe just be a little bit more realistic and reactive or proactive, I would say, to where people are in their respective journeys. And I think that's perhaps where, from the insurance side of things, instead of just selling a product, 30-year term life policy, and disappearing into the nether, perhaps we can do a better job at following up, showing up, and checking in to make sure that people have what they need when they need it. And I think what really excites me about technology, and perhaps, one of the biggest pluses coming out of a lot of what we're seeing around the automation space, is that hopefully we can allow people to do that. We can remove a lot of the complexity, fragmentation across the insurance value chain, and allow people to do their jobs, the way that they want to do them. And, I think everybody I've ever met in the insurance space wants to do their job well and loves to engage with, they want to help people, but more often than not, tools and technology get in the way, friction gets in the way. And I hope that we can kind of move forwards and do a better job at providing tools and building platforms that help people work more effectively.
Couldn't agree more. It's really kind of going back to our roots, in that we're really helping people to live their lives or run their businesses in as much of an effective manner as possible in a world full of risk, and do it in a financial responsible way that they, kind of put out on the street, so to speak.
Yeah, spot on.
So, one of the areas, obviously, kind of going into 2023 here, growth is really top of mind for industry, but it's becoming even more so around profitable growth. And part of that growth is really based on, customers, the risk that's out there, but also this rise in new channels to be able to reach customers who maybe don't necessarily always want to work through an agent or a broker. And embedded insurance is really one of those areas that it's really about market reach, and it's reaching those customers when and where they want to buy. In those partnerships where you're able to offer embedded insurance, the cost of sales is really much different than it is maybe through our traditional channels. Why is embedded so exciting, and how is that really going to both help drive growth, but maybe also some profitability?
I think embedded is incredibly exciting. We talked a little bit about this at the InsurTech on the Silicon Prairie event as well. I remember. I think it's exciting because, it's really an opportunity to meet that customer, as you said, where they want to be met in some form or another. I think embedded has been around for quite a long time, right? So, you go through any of the big retail apps, Best Buy, Target, Amazon, and so forth. There's always some form of embedded or third-party sale of insurance or warranty as part of that journey. So for me, that's kind of like, that's almost the basic form of embedded. I had to buy a car, added the third kid, and bought a car about a year and a half ago. And at the time, the embedded insurance experience at that point was kind of getting the hard sell of buying insurance at that point. It didn't really feel like embedded insurance. It just felt like another thing to buy. So I don't know if that's the type of experience that really we want to offer. I think for me, the more exciting part or potential for embedded is, again, this idea of creating an integrated experience, whether that's through APIs, whether that's through personalized data, making it customizable, making it transparent. All of those pieces of friction that perhaps come from a traditional sales process, being able to embed that within the points of sale through technology and better data. I think that's the really exciting part. And, coming back to your point about meeting the customer where they want to be met, I would just say that something to be cognizant of. My mum and dad, who are both in their 80s, not doing terribly well health-wise, but for them, where they want to be met is still, down at the bank, meeting somebody face to face. They can barely use a phone to send a text, let alone do their banking online or buy insurance online.
Like my dad too.
Yeah, so it's just like, whenever you spend any time with somebody like that, you just sort of remember that this enormous part of society, millions of other elderly people in their shoes who just, as much as we want to drive a seamless experience online, we just have to remember there are so many more people out there whose idea of a good customer experience is going to be very different to perhaps people of our generation, Denise. So I think embedded is so exciting. It's incredibly exciting, but at the same time, need to be cognizant of people who are not quite ready for that type of customer experience.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we've been kind of talking a little bit about throughout this is really around technology. And let's kind of dive into that a little bit more, because it really is that foundation to adapt and innovate and deliver at speed, like you talked about, to execute on strategies, to introduce new products, and to adapt to different market shifts. What are the next technology trends that you're looking at, and what should others be considering or experimenting with to be at the leading edge?
My goodness, I think there are so many. Partly it might depend where you are on that kind of digital journey, as we hear so much about. And obviously, I think cloud is an incredible place to be, and having accessibility to so many different pieces of technology, services, you can very quickly play, experiment, build proof of concept, POCs, kind of get to MVP quite quickly through experimenting with the cloud. The other pieces of technology that I think we've all heard so much about, over the past probably couple of months, ChatGPT, obviously, some really exciting and quite impressive AI technology that's coming very, very quickly. Astria being another one, kind of imaging sides. I think there's lots to be excited about, but I think even as a tech guy, which I suppose I am as well, I'm always sort of cognizant these days of thinking about how do we use the technology, where do we use it to be effective. There's a real temptation to get very excited about all of this cool tech, start throwing it at the wall and in the hope that something sticks. But I would just say that the really exciting part of it is being able to think about how do we continue to deliver a better customer experience. And I think that's maybe where the really exciting stuff can start to take place.
So one of the things too, technology isn't a panacea for everything, because you've really got to think about the culture. You got to think about your business model, your processes. When you think about speed to market, which I know is a big area of focus for a lot of business leaders, trying to get product out within weeks or just 2 or 3 months versus the years that it may have taken in the past. This requires not just technology, but it requires a change in mindset to execute. Talk through what your insights and experience has been around this, Chris.
This is something that comes up at events time and time again, that this idea of technology moving faster and faster, innovation, you have to innovate. But the reality is there are certain hurdles and boundaries that, typically get in the way. And I think that when we kind of think back to some of the conversation earlier, thinking about kind of incumbents in the space or companies who perhaps have a little bit more of a legacy profile, it gets a bit more challenging to be able to move at the speed that perhaps people want to move at. So I think obviously it depends on the type of technology or the type of innovation that's occurring, but it's not easy. I've been involved on the tech side of things for quite a long time in multiple capacities, and as much as you want to move very quickly, there's still enormous oversight required, especially when you're thinking about APIs that potentially connect multiple platforms and systems. Where is that data going? How is the data being used? Is it encrypted at rest? Is it encrypted in transit? Who's responsible for the maintenance? And and then I think when you start to add in AI and machine learning to the mix as well, then the regulators take interest, right? They want to know, how are those decisions being made, right? I mean, they focus is then kind of on reviewing the AI and machine learning based models. How traceable are they? Can we determine the trace of a score, and how was that decision made? So I think as much as technology is enabling us to move quickly and to do things faster, there are other questions that I think need to be asked. And I think the hope is that we can find the right balance between being able to move quickly and test and try and fail quickly and fail forward, or all of those fun concepts, but at the same time do it in a way that is still ethical, and we can make sure that we are taking care as we go.
Getting close to wrapping up here, Chris, what's your bold prediction for what you see for insurance in the next 3 to 5 years?
These are fun questions, right? I mean, this is kind of one of those ones where perhaps you can kind of break it down to different parts of insurance. I think for personal lines and small business, we undoubtedly will continue to see perhaps underwriting and claims being automated to a much larger extent. I think for the more complex work, we will absolutely continue to see people being a core part of that process, which I'm very excited about. I think for other parts of the customer journey, what we're seeing with some of the AI tools coming to market like ChatGPT, I think we're seeing the beginning. It's very early in terms of those tools, not terribly sophisticated, but at the same time, potentially incredibly powerful in terms of what they can do and the type of functionality that they can deliver. So I think we'll continue to see kind of a blend of people and technology. Talked a little bit about that, Denise, just, the idea of building better tools, better platforms, systems, and so forth to help people kind of get that insight and kind of deliver the actionable responses to customers as quickly as possible. So I think that will continue to improve, but I mean, certainly automation will play a larger role in just about every part of the ecosystem.
I like to close up my podcast, and Christopher, the pressure's on because I've only had 3 duplicates, and I think it's about 79 podcasts. So if you could use one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would it be and why?
So I'm not going to say embedded because I think that's probably one of the most popular recent ones. I would say continuous. I think insurance will be a constant part of our lives, right? Driving, walking, running, living, traveling, growing. I mean, it's going to be constant. Everything we do will impact in one way or another our own risk profile, right? What we eat, what we drink, how we drive, where we travel, devices in our home. I think we will see consolidation and I hope a simplification of insurance products, using data to price and protect accurately. One thing at NextShield, we are moving in that direction. And so instead of 3 or 4 insurance products spanning multiple verticals, we'll start to see the emergence of a single flexible insurance product that kind of adapts and changes with you, the insured, and your daily needs and habits. I think continuous, perhaps my word. I hope it hasn't come up so far.
Hey, it hasn't come up so far, so you did good, Christopher.
Okay, I passed the test.
Well, it's been great speaking with you, and I absolutely love when we're on a panel together, and hopefully we will be again this coming year because there's a lot of exciting things going to be happening in the industry, and I'm glad we're both a part of it and this next evolution of InsurTech, Christopher.
Denise, thank you so much. This has been a blast, and thank you to everybody else who's listening. We'll listen at some point.
Thanks, Christopher.
All right, take care, Denise. Cheers.
That's it for this week's episode of Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast. Subscribe to our market-leading podcast series available wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in the next time.